Hey, what's up YouTube? What we're looking at right here is my Byzantium save file of, this has basically been a one-shot stream. You can see we've played about 44 years, and this is where we're at Byzantium. Obviously it takes a strategy to actually execute a playthrough as Byzantium, but I just wanted to demonstrate here that with Sandar as my vassal that's being fed in 1488, I think this is definitely one of, if not the best games I've ever played as Byzantium, and I wanted to basically shoot a quick tutorial on how to demonstrate, or rather execute, my latest strategy. So I hope you guys enjoy that. Okay, so let's get into it, guys. What we're going to start by doing is, hey, we're rivaled by Hungary. That's different. I didn't even know we were a possible Hungary for rival. We're going to start by improving our relations with Albania and deleting this fort in the south of Greece. I'm going to basically move my troops down to the south of Greece whilst reinforcing up to 11 out of 11 forces. I will actually rival the Ottomans, and the rest is a little bit fluffy, but you definitely want to rival the Ottoman Empire. And we're going to move the rest of our troops over. So as far as missions, they're not all that important. We can conquer Yanya, that's perfect, or the reconquest of Yanya. And I'm going to proclaim a guarantee over Albania as soon as our emissary has returned. That way we can get an alliance with them as soon as possible. So let me just talk for a moment about the strengths of this strategy. It's kind of both the strength and the weakness of this strategy. It all goes down in the early stages of the game. Let's actually build one overall force limit here. It's actually quite a difficult strategy to execute and far from reliable from my experience. However, the strength of it is that it all goes down right at the beginning of the game here. And if you're doing it poorly, if you make a mistake, if you have bad luck, you can just retry it again. On my stream, we actually did it in one shot, which is quite fortunate, although it really came down to the wire, and I felt as though I might have to restart at one point. We did manage to pull it off. So what we're looking for here is the Albanians helping us in an offensive war against the Ottoman Empire. From my experience, they will not help you. However, when the Ottomans warn them to not go to war, that will actually irritate them. You can see the negative modifier they have for having neutral relations. If the relations are ruined between these two nations, he typically will aid you as long as you promise to give him land, which of course we're not going to do. We plan to just, there's the warning. So I imagine next month, oh no, it didn't even take a month in this case. His attitude shifted and he's going to help us out here. So we're going to pause the game up. As I was saying, we're not going to give Albania any land, which is actually going to ruin our relations with him. But he's a one province minor. So believe it or not, this is basically the strategy, guys. That's it. Everything else is basically going to come down to very meticulous unit control and actually defeating the Ottoman Empire. So what I'm going to try to do is attach the Athenian stacks to one of my one stacks and attach the key Albanian stack with his Skanderbeg general, who is really the key of this strategy, to another stack. As long as we have full control of our forces, we're going to feel somewhat confident here. Now, I'm going to actually raise war taxes. You can see, even though we're over our force limit, having destroyed this fort, raising war taxes, we're basically breaking even in terms of our economy. Although, of course, that won't last if our armies are reconsolidating or reinforcing, I mean to say. But with the help of looting his lands, hopefully we can at least be stable or make profit while at war. That's the key. Okay, perfect. 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 This is the ideal scenario here. We have the Athenians attached to this stack and the Albanians attached to this stack, so we are effectively in control of our entire force. Now, if we actually compare forces, we can see that we're outnumbered. Of course, the Ottomans have just straight up superior units than we do in the early stage of the game, the Anatolian units. And they have the Ottoman discipline from traditions, so they're extremely formidable. However, the only real advantage that we have is this absolutely impeccable general 555, and we have the fact that he is AI. You can see here that he's basically making a crucial mistake, whereas he's sending his general-less army over towards me, separate from his other army, which happens to have his general on it. And I have a really good feeling about this. When this army is isolated, we're going to go in against it with our 5-shock general. Again, he has that discipline, he has the better units, and he has the numbers, but he's dividing his army in two. With the help of this 5-shock versus 0-shock, I think I like the way that this is going to pan out. So I'm going to consolidate everything while his troops are not consolidated, and we're going to rush in here on Venice. Now this basically provokes his other stack to respond. Let's actually turn the speed down because the micromanaging is extremely important. Okay, but we can see here that, unsurprisingly, our 5-shock general has managed to stack wipe the Ottomans. Now, sometimes you do have issues with the AI attaching and detaching, and that's actually what happened during my stream, which really made the game quite difficult when it didn't have to be as difficult as it was. So, although we've stack wiped the Ottomans, the biggest mistake that you could make is basically saying, yay, he's only got 14,000 troops, let's rush out and try to engage him and try to push our advantage. That's the exact opposite of what we're actually going to do. What we're going to do is use these 3 mountain provinces to our advantage, and we're only going to take defensive battles against his very formidable troops, unless the kind of circumstance just arose there where we can engage half of his army when they're actually separate and isolated. If he is in a circumstance that we don't like for example he's about to potentially siege Albania, we don't want him to siege Albania because that will allow him to separate peace Albania. The best way to handle this is to actually move your stack over to this fort. He typically does not want to trade sieges with you, and this will basically provoke him to act. So let's see if... there we go. As you can see, that's correct. Now what we're going to do is retreat back to the mountains, trying to loot his land, sieging up provinces here and there if we can. And this is basically the cat and mouse strategy that we're going to utilize against him. Just rinse and repeat. As long as you continuously win battles and you have ticking war score, well, there's no way that he can beat you, basically, right? You just prolong this further and further and further. Eventually, even though we stack wiped him, you'll see here that he is reinforcing, and he will reinforce. But eventually his manpower will run thin, his economy will start to break, and if you're lucky, you might even have one of his rivals or even the smaller nations collapse in on him and destroy him. So although I could play this game out, just like in the case of my live stream, it actually took a long time, like maybe 20-30 minutes. So I think that I have demonstrated this strategy, and again, in the beginning of this video, as I showed you, that save file was achieved utilizing this strategy. And I think I have demonstrated here exactly how to do it. It comes down to a lot of patience and a lot of very careful, meticulous micromanagement. The only way that you would ever want to take on the entire Ottoman force is in the mountains, in particular this province here, because there is a river crossing from almost every province around it, and with your 5 maneuver general, he will receive -2 from mountains, but also the river crossing, resulting in -3 to rolls. With your 5 shock and their -3 to rolls, if you're lucky, you can take on the entire Ottoman Empire in a defensive battle in this province. So yeah, I think that that's going to wrap it up. You guys will basically have to take my word for it unless you want to actually do this yourself. And if you do this yourself, I wish you the best of luck. It's really going to come down to sieging this fort. But like I said, we don't want to actually overextend and siege this fort when we could otherwise be defending in the mountains. So you're going to wait to prolong the Ottomans until they're absolutely exhausted and they just don't have the same kind of numbers that they had. That's when you're going to step forward onto this province, siege it out. By that time, having won many battles with your ticking war score, you're going to be able to take a tremendous amount of land. Another thing to consider is that if you do push him over to the Anatolian side, if you can acquire military access through Serbia, you can walk around and sit in his capital, which is going to result in -2 because of the crossing the strait. That is without obtaining this fort. You can walk through if you have military access from Serbia. So again, I hope this helps you guys out, and if you want to watch a kick-ass Byzantium playthrough, make sure to tune in to my stream. The link is down below. Thank you guys for watching.